1.4. The 4 C's of comedy. You need characters for your sitcom. We've looked at those. And there are 3 more C's to come: conflict, confinement, and catastrophe. Conflict. Characters must clash. A show in which your characters all get along fine, where there are no arguments or crosswords, is not going to be very interesting. That sounds more like a backslapping political rally. A sitcom needs conflict. 2 or more characters that look at the world very differently and want different things out of life. I'm going to use some American examples as they spring to mind first. Let's start with one of the greatest shows of all time, Cheers. Cheers is about drinking buddies in a Boston bar. Norm, Cliff and Carla all look up to Sam Malone as the cock of the walk who is always a hit with the ladies. But the show starts when Sam finds someone who is apparently resistant to his charms, Diane. When they do finally get it together, Diane is trying to change Sam and discovering she's not succeeding. Almost every show for the first few years had that Sam-Diane conflict at the centre. Cheers spun off into Frasier, which contains an even more satisfying conflict. Frasier has a brother, Niles, who is like Fraser, only more so. Niles is the snobby social climber who practices high-end psychiatry, not stooping to the vulgar pop psychology of a radio phone-in. This produces jealousy, rivalry, and competition. Conflict. Plus they egg each other on. Add to this they are both in conflict with their dad, an ex-cop, who is a real blue-collar man's man. He has a hideous green chair and a dog called Eddie. Conflict all over the place, and we've not even got to the unrequited love story of Niles and Daphne. So you need conflict, but you also need confinement. A sitcom is not a movie. It sounds obvious to say this, but lots of people trying to write sitcoms have grown up watching movies and failed to distinguish. In fact, you might be trying to write a sitcom because it seemed easier than writing a movie. This may or may not be the case, but the 2 genres are very different. In a movie, a character has an epiphany, or there's an inciting incident, a trigger event that sets a story in motion. This pushes the character out of the everyday and they go on a journey. They tend to break free from their usual relationships and meet new people and have new experiences, learn from them, and change as a result. In sitcoms, people don't change. They don't break free as much as they yearn to. Their personalities are set in stone. They make the same mistake because of the same character flaws and they clash with the same people. In many ways, sitcoms are so popular because this is a more truthful depiction of life. We are stuck with our families and colleagues and neighbours and friends. We have the same conversations and arguments about the same things week after week. We know what someone's going to say before they've said it. We know how they're going to react. And we still get furious and exasperated at this. Sitcoms, when they're working, have that ring of truth. Life is repetitive, and nothing really changes. We live in sitcoms, not movies. So when we come to think about our characters in conflict, we need to work out what's keeping them together. They need confinement. It's very annoying to be watching a show when 2 characters are driving each other crazy and you wonder why they don't just walk away from each other. The most common confinement is family. Characters are a married couple, My Family, 2.4 Children, brothers, Only Fools and Horses, Frasier, parent and child, Mrs. Brown's Boys, Bread, and so forth. Or their colleagues in a workplace, The Office, Reggie Perrin, Yes Minister, Thin Blue Line. Or they're physically confined for some reason. Maybe they're in prison, Porridge, or in a mostly deserted spaceship, Red Dwarf, or confined to an island, Father Ted. Ultimately, the reason for their confinement is the situation of your situation comedy. So we have our characters in conflict and in a confined situation. What we need next is catastrophe. This will be covered in more detail later as we look at storylining, but it's essentially asking the question, what goes wrong? Your character has a quest. They've decided to do something and take action. In a sitcom, your character's plans go awry. Their best intentions are thwarted. They try to make it better, but that just makes it worse. Only when it seems all hope is lost and the character's flaws utterly exposed is there some kind of resolution that takes us back to where we started. More on this when we look at storylining and plotting. Before we start thinking about that, there are a few other loose ends to tie up and questions to answer.